Okay, so hi, I'm Ritika Amit Kumar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of STEM Metaverse. And today I'm going to introduce you and take you through the orientation session for the United Nations SDG Design Thinking Hackathon. SDG essentially stands for Sustainable Development Goals, and many of us are already aware of that. Today, we are going to be talking about the second goal, that is solving for zero hunger. Now, if you've noticed over here, design thinking was put up in bold purple letters. That's because our key focus throughout this hackathon, as is true for every other hackathon across the world, is on design thinking and how you're going to think through the process, identify problems, and solve for them. But what is really design thinking? I'm sure many of us have heard the term, but here's a very, very short and brief breakdown on what it's all about. It's a six-pronged process, essentially. The first step being empathizing, understanding the problem, and getting sensitized to it. This happens through data and understanding of that data and an analysis of that data. So in this program, we're actually going to give you access to a data vault, as we call it, which will contain a whole lot of information which you will have to process and analyze. When you do that, you will come across several problems and gaps that you will notice. And those will be the little problems that you would put out. So that's, for a larger problem like zero hunger, when you're solving for it, there are several other smaller problems that you also need to look at. So that's where the second step is going to arrive. When you look at that data, you identify gaps and then you identify problems that lie there. The third step is when you actually look at those problems and then you start researching and you talk to your mentors, your teachers, your parents, your family, since you're all students, your colleagues, friends, and then you come out with ideas on how to solve some of those problems. Now, for many of you, your core skill set may be around communication, could be around programming, could be around understanding processes and streamlining processes better. So you need to understand where your skill set lies and then solve for those problems. So that's where ideation happens, because you've now understood the problem. You've sort of defined several other problems within the bigger problem, larger problem. And now you're now talking to people, researching, and then identifying what are the problems that you have a skill set to solve for. So I can give you an example over here. Say you feel pertaining to zero hunger, you're good at communication. You might want to create an awareness campaign around it. Or maybe you're good at coding. You might want to develop an app for farm to table, for farmers to get a direct access to market. These are some things that are already happening, but they've all come through this design thinking process. So you need to now think of a step further. If you're good at processes or good at legal, you have a legal background, you would have to think of solving problems through those avenues and areas. An example of processes could be that, you find that there is a nutrient deficiency in a particular part of the world, and you find that same nutrient is grown in abundance in another part of the world. So you would then have to put your thinking hat on, see how you can, get maybe biotechnologists to hybridize and grow that particular plant in different climatic conditions where there is a nutrient deficiency. You could look at transport options. You could look at several other options. Depends on how you identify a problem within a larger problem and then solve for it. Then comes in prototyping. Now you've ideated, you identified a problem, you've thought of how you want to solve it. You need to now create a prototype. So that prototype could be just samples of what kind of an ad campaign would you want to, or awareness campaign would you want to run. It could be a sample of the kind of app you want to develop. It could be just a design, or a process design on what a mind map maybe of how you think you can solve the problem. You could look at several of these and then put them in the form of a prototype, show them to people around you, take feedback, and then actually put out a very small implementation strategy. So in this hackathon, we're not looking at you implementing things, but we're looking at understanding how you look at a problem, try and solve for it, and think about how to implement solutions to that problem. So don't worry, we're going to take you through the data vault. We're also going to run you through a little bit of about zero hunger, share a little perspective on it. But this is essentially what your entire framework for solving for the hackathon is going to be. Now, moving ahead, when you look at problems, the key thing that you need to think about is, how do we define a problem? Well, this is the most important step. How do you identify and define problems? And this is where the larger part of the solution also lies. But let you into a secret. Even we don't really know how are you going to solve for that problem or identify that problem. And that's the reason why we're having these hackathons. The thing over here is, and this is pure government data, we don't know the kind of problems you're going to be facing in 2030. And that's the time when you guys would be literally earning or solving for things. And you would be, literally at the helm of affairs. You would be working by then. Many of you would be working by then. But here is what the problem is. The International Labour Organization suggests that there would be 29 million skills in deficit by the year 2030. So we don't even know what these skills are going to be. So we don't know what lies ahead, but we need you to solve for it. And the only way our generation can help you solve for it or prepare for it is by throwing you into the deep ocean and getting you to think of ways to come out of it. Otherwise, there is no other way to actually prepare you to think out of the box, think on your feet, and just solve, because we don't even know what the problem ahead is going to be. So in fact, to explain the magnitude of the problem we are likely to face is, it's literally going to cause us a loss of $2 trillion in GDP by 2030. And this is India-centric figures. So it's a big problem. But we have a good news as well. And the good news is that India's budget for skill development just for the year of 22-23 is roughly 12,000 crores. Now, this figure is in crores, and the earlier figure that I shared was in millions and trillions, and you need to sort of problem solve. So I'm not going to be converting this for you, but this is just to reflect and share that this is the amount of focus everybody, all education institutions, the government, and everyone has been asked to put into skill development. And one major skill that you need to develop is design thinking, because at the end of the day, everything that translates onto paper actually happens in the head first. So this is where this hackathon is important, and you should participate in it. The good thing about us at STEM Metaverse is that we're trying to develop skills through various partners. And one of our most prominent partners is UNITAR. And UNITAR has this amazing program called the Young Leader Program, wherein they help you acquire leadership skills for all these problems that are now going to occur in 2030 for the skill deficit. So essentially, what they're doing is they're helping you, because leadership is going to be very different in the years to come. You are going to have to think of problems that don't exist as of now. They're possibly going to exist in the future. And you need to motivate children to you need to motivate people, your colleagues and teammates, to solve for a problem that doesn't exist, that nobody can see. So a leader is a person who can foresee problems and then motivate people to solve them, even when those team members cannot actually see those problems. So here I'm going to introduce to you Julian and Azra from UNITAR, that is the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. And they're going to take you through their lovely program called the Young Leader Program. So over to you, Julian and Azra.
Thanks so much, Ritika. Greetings to every one of you from Geneva, Switzerland. Switzerland is a tiny country in the middle of Europe, and Geneva is a very small city right at the center, surrounded by France. And Geneva is very famous for being the hub of the United Nations in Europe. So there's many things we could discuss here, we could see here. And I, in fact, also created a little PowerPoint presentation. Let me open it for you. Are you all doing all right, by the way? You enjoying yourselves? Are you ready for the hackathon? We're very glad to partner together with STEM Metaverse. Excellent. Fantastic. Now, as Ritika already said, we are partnering with STEM Metaverse. We're here in Geneva. And in case you don't know how Geneva looks like, here we have a little picture for you. Small, beautiful, but most importantly, it's really packed with United Nations organization. So all these problems that Ritika has, described already, the challenges that are lying ahead, the United Nations is there to trying to tackle them as well, right? So here we have, for example, the World Trade Organization. Here we have the World Meteorological Organization. That's all about climate change here. Here is, for example, UNHCR helping the refugees in the world. Some of them may have to leave their countries because of climate change. So it's all interrelated with each other. And here, this is actually the big palace of nations. This is, let's say, the heart of the UN in Geneva, where all the diplomats, join in their conferences, countries talk to each other to solve the problems in the world. Here's another picture. And I hope some of you have the chance to come to Geneva once. If so, please send us a message to Asra and me, because we are very passionate about this place, the Palace of Nations it's called, and we're happy to show you around it. Now, this is what the United Nations looks like when you have the entire system. And that might, surprise you, because you might have thought the United Nations is actually one organization, but it's much more than that. It's like an umbrella, as you see. And all of these smaller UN agencies, they exist to exactly try to, solve one of these global problems that we are facing. For example, zero hunger, right? We have the World Food Program here, or also the Food and Agricultural Organization, which tries to tackle that. There are plenty of more things. And here, just to give you a sneak peek, if you want to work for the United Nations one day, this is actually how it looks like from inside. Of course, the top is the Secretary General. Who of you knows his name? Antonio Guterres from Portugal. And there are many others. But interesting for you, perhaps in the future, is here, the internship. This is how you could contribute. You join in the United Nations for 6 months, for example, and help out. And of course, and that's what Ritika also mentioned, the United Nations is all working for these SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's kind of like the to-do list for humanity. It's like you're at school and you're writing down your homework. This has to be done by the year of 2030. You see, it's ambitious, but it can be done. Zero hunger is one of the goals. Same as quality education, which is our main motivation, and climate action and plenty of more things. So this is just to give you some appetizers here, of this entire United Nations world that is there to discover. And I know at least one of you now having a big smile on your face. This is Asra. She is now my colleague. She might say a few words just in a second, but the key thing is Asra has joined the United Nations by taking one of our programs. And we have this UN Young Leaders Training Program coming up now. It's 2 weeks of length. It starts quite soon. It starts in about 1.5 weeks, but we still have some space available. And since we have the cooperation with STEM Metaverse and Ritika, there's actually quite some, peaks and perks for you to join in as well. This is a 2-week program. As I said, you will have a module on the United Nations. You will have a module on the Sustainable Development Goals. We will have expert lectures, diplomatic training workshops, and also virtual guided tours, getting to know here International Geneva as well. And at the end of these 2 weeks, you will get a certificate showing that you have obtained this knowledge. And of course, you have gained valuable contacts, if not friends, in Asra and me that are here in Geneva and ready to help when we can. So thanks so much for your attention. And over to you again, Ritika, and good luck for your hackathon.
Thank you, Julian. And thank you for that wonderful insight into what the Young Leader program is going to be about and what it's going to cover. I'm sure it's going to be very exciting for children to study with other international students and understand and widen their perspective on problem solving and also understanding the world maybe a little better. So before I go ahead and talk about Zero Hunger, I would like to actually introduce to you Mrs. Rachna Kodesia. She's she's actually the person who got Montessori education into India. Her learning, her teaching, facilitation techniques are absolutely unique. So ma'am, I'd like you to talk a little bit about leadership and how you see leadership changing, and why is it important for today's children to do something like this, to be involved in a leadership course like this.
Thank you so much, Ritika. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are, and I'm going to just
okay. So, first, let me just congratulate you for this awesome thought. And Julian, it's awesome listening to you, and the kind of partnership that you have is going to go a long way in actually solving the problems. Now, when we talk about leadership, I think that the youth of today and the children of today are definitely more evolved than any one of us. Their awareness levels and how they think, and their innovation, their creative thinking, and even their innovative ideas, they just may not require our support. First is this, because I truly trust the minds of today. And what is the best part is that the idealism that this youth has, about concerns and the concern that they have, it's untainted by acceptance of leaving things as they are. If they are given a seed of reform and looking into things and solving the problems and giving them their responsibility, we are going to have the best next leaders in the world.